Welcome, everybody. This is Tom, one of the three hosts of your favorite podcast, RecLess. I am really delighted to be here right now with Hannah Mize, our editor, our executive producer, our webmaster. There are so many titles that I can probably go on and on and on, but you all know Hannah, Shane's better half, and we are about to launch the introductory episode of This Parks and Rec Life. This Parks and Rec Life is going to be somewhat of a spin-off or offshoot of RecLess, and it's inspired by an episode that we hosted many seasons ago. I believe we call it The Spouses. And in that episode, Hannah joined us as one of my four guests. It was a surprise four-guest episode. We had Hannah Mize, Melissa Salatino, my wife, Jay's wife, Lindsay Tryon, and Josh Keller, Katie Keller's husband. And during that episode, we talked a lot about what it's like to be on the other side of this great profession in that support system. And Hannah's been giving that a lot of thought ever since that episode and how impactful the episode could be, or how the episode was, and how impactful those conversations can be moving forward. So we're really excited. Hannah's going to take this on as the host. She's going to have some guest hosts here and there. And on the other side of the conversation are going to be professionals in the field and their partners or their support systems. So, this Parks and Rec Life, Hannah Mize, can you tell us a little bit about it before we get into our first conversation?
Thank you, Tom. I'm really excited. And yes, this venture, this new podcast has come about because of that episode that we had with the spouses. And then as a result of that, I've had a lot of conversations with other spouses and other loved ones as we've been at conference, or other spouses that I know in the field. And it's just driven home the point that this is a conversation that needs to be had, and these are important points to talk about, and that talking about government service is not easy. Like what you guys do all of the time is not an easy thing. And the more you can talk about it, the more you can normalize it, the more that support systems and spouses and loved ones realize that the things that they feel, they are not alone in feeling those things. Those feelings are not unique to them, and that we've all had to figure out a way to not just survive this thing, but to thrive in it. And it is definitely possible. And that is something that I really hope to bring to families as they are able to listen to this and maybe start some of their own conversations. I'm really excited that with this format, we're going to release as video on YouTube. So you'll get to see me and the guest host, whoever that may be, and then our guest couples as they're there. And then we'll also release it as an audio on all of your favorite podcast platforms. So those will still release that way. But I am really excited to release those that in that manner. This first one is going to, obviously you're hearing it on Thanksgiving as we're rolling this out. And RecLess is taking a little bit of a break, but I'm really excited for you guys to be able to hear. This first one is a conversation between Shane and myself. So I'm really excited to release that one.
It's exciting. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I might be co-hosting. And so I'm going to have to remember that we're going to be on video. So I'm going to have to glow up. And I am just really looking forward to this, the conversations that we're going to be having and hearing. You and I have talked about it a bunch of times, and even during that episode, not anyone's experience is the same. Everybody is going through similar challenges or triumphs, but how that's experienced at home and worked through with your support system is so different. So I think there's a lot to learn there, whether it's from the side of the practitioner themselves or those support systems within their life. So with that, Hannah, I'm going to ask you one more question. What are some key topics or themes that we can expect and tease our listeners with?
Some key topics and themes, and we've have already been actively recording some of these, so it's been really fun to hear. Do you reconcile schedules? How do you reconcile your loved one's career, their success versus your success? How you manage to do holidays, you have difficult conversations with friends or with families. So I'm really excited to delve into some of these topics, and hopefully it sparks some conversation with some of our other Parks and Rec families and professionals in the field.
All right. And when are we looking to launch? After this
We are
episode, of course.
Yes, this is our teaser episode to kind of get you ready, and then we'll be launching in the new year. So when RecLess takes a little bit of a break in between seasons, this will release during that time, and then from there, then we'll release, and this will have its own release date and time each week, or every other week, actually.
All right. Well, we are really, really excited to see what comes of this. Everybody on the other side of the mic, buckle up. I think we're going to give you even more of an inside look of this profession from a different perspective. And so now I welcome you all to sit back and enjoy the show.
My love is a place you can always call home.
Welcome to This Parks and Rec Life, a new show from the RecLess team where we talk about the very impactful but important parts of Parks and Rec that is often unspoken, home life. I'm Shane Mize from RecLess, and I'm here guest hosting today with my wife and our executive producer, Hannah. How you doing, sweetie?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Through this podcast, Hannah is ultimately going to be taking you on a journey through the with Parks and Rec pros and their spouses, talking about balancing a home life with public rec service. And she'll have some guest hosts along the way. But today she's on the hot seat, and I'll be asking her some questions about this podcast, how it came out, and next steps for it. And I'm super excited. So welcome, and hopefully you enjoy the show. How you
Glad to
doing
be here.
today?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to
You're
be here.
You're excited.
I am excited. I've kind of bulldozed you a little bit.
Yep. I was just
Um,
relaxing.
and I
Now I'm doing a
said,
podcast.
I said, please get up and come do this with me. I have this great idea, and
That's
let's do it
right.
right now.
That is
Uh,
basically what happened.
and once again, balancing our personalities, right?
That's right. That's right. I'd have rather done this next week. So I think this is an incredible concept. We've talked about it for a while. People we've talked to this about have seemed to be like either initially got it almost immediately, and I think those are the ones that have had hard conversations, or they've gotten to that point where like, yeah, no, that's something that would have been very interesting. And so tell me a little bit more about the concept of this podcast, this Parks and Rec Life.
So, one of the things that I really want to explore with this podcast and with our coming guests is the idea that mental health and your support system play a very, very large role. The support system of your family plays a very, very large role of the mental health and the career longevity that a professional has in the field. That if your family is not happy with what you're doing, it's going to be hard for you to be happy with what you're doing, because you need a safe space to be able to go home to at the end of the day. And as a spouse, as a loved one, as the support system of that career professional, there's a lot of things that are hard to reconcile, that you didn't see coming, that you thought that it would be different. Like you hear that your spouse is going to be in the Parks and Rec field, and everybody, the first reaction that anyone ever has whenever someone says we work in Parks and Rec is, "Oh my gosh, that must be the most fun job ever."
Yeah.
And in reality, there's a lot of hardship that comes with that. If you're the wife or the spouse of a police officer or a fireman or a athletic coach or something, everybody kind of expects that there's going to be these things that you have to get over and that are hard. If you're a military spouse or something like that, but no one sees it coming in the parks and recreation field. And so then when you experience it, if you're not ready and you haven't had communication over it, can really cause some problems.
Those groups you mentioned handle the trauma better, like
Yeah.
those wives of football coaches, which we were almost in that segment, are really close.
Mhm.
wives of police officers have that thin blue line that they try to make sure, that they're on and supportive. And same thing with fire and same thing with military. And I'm not saying to be a Parks and Rec director is similar to your spouse being sent on deployment,
Overseas, right? Which it is
but it's
not.
a
It is not.
no, but it's a posting for sure. Um, it's a job where everything you do, especially the higher up you go, but even at the very entry levels, to be quite honest, is held up to a lot of scrutiny. There are a lot of different people that think Parks and Rec should be done a lot of different ways. There's going to be parents and spectators and guests and attendees that do or don't disagree with your decision. And that's sometimes not a big deal when your spouse is an electrical engineer. I don't know if that comes up very often, but if your spouse is a park and rec professional, they're a forester and they cut down, trim, move, repopulate a whole grove of trees, that's up to the scrutiny of the public in some ways. And in a social media world where decisions like that get kicked around very easily, or discussions about those decisions get kicked around very easily, and government employees in general, public service employees in general, are sometimes looked at with some amount of disdain. Whether you're teachers or you're working in federal or state government um, or any type of government work, that can be really tough for those spouses to see on Facebook and social media, to see what Nextdoor app says about your husband's decision to reroute a trail, for example, which you've
Absolutely.
experienced.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a weird feeling sometimes to step into a situation where I'm so proud of you. A career in public service is not an easy thing. I love to tell people about you and what you do. And that has backfired several times on me, where you go in
Yeah.
and you tell who your spouse is and what they do. And then all of a sudden, the conversation turns into, well, they just did blank, blank, or blank. That was a terrible idea. Why don't let me talk to that person? All of a sudden it turns into a gripe fest that you didn't see coming, and
Yeah.
an attack. It's kind of that those kinds of things. Um, we don't talk about so much in the field of being the support system of a Parks and Rec professional.
Yeah. I could think of just a couple, I think it was less than a month or two ago. I was picking you up at a wine bar you like to haunt, and you introduced me and said I was the director of Parks and Rec. And that used to be something that, you could lead with. And now, it's almost something I avoid. I'd almost tell people I was an electrical engineer just to kill a conversation versus telling them I'm Parks and Rec director, which leads to a whole bunch of questions, good and bad. But
Mhm.
we
And
manage,
actually, if you remember, I actually didn't say that you were the Parks and Rec director. He started talking to you, and then you
then I said
said,
it. Yep.
and then it led into a whole conversation that then I was like, cash us out, let's leave, because
Yep.
he was ready to be, his public comment, his 5 minutes of public comment in the
Oh
middle
yeah.
of what was a fun evening, and he kind of ruined it. And that has happened more than once.
Yeah, for sure. And so, that's not something we talk about in schools. It's not even something we really talk about um, at NRPA conferences, at state conferences. And, I don't think you can talk about professionally developing a Parks and Rec professional, and talking about work-life balance, and think we're doing everything we can holistically for um, the people in this industry, with the whole idea that if you make everyone better, the tide kind of rises all boats in our industry. But they come back to a very tense or untenable home life due to their hours, their work, the stress, um, and think that they're going to be able to do this service for 20, 25 years. It's really
Right.
difficult.
and for it to be sustainable. I mean, you and I, neither one are licensed therapists. We're not licensed counselors.
Right.
What we are is a couple that has managed to stay married successfully and be happy with each other in a good relationship for going on 26 years almost, and
Hmm.
20, 22, 23 of those. How long
Yeah,
have you been in Parks
two
and Rec?
thousand four, 2004, so 21 years.
Yeah,
And
of
before
those
that, I was
years,
coaching and I was at Campus Rec. So even the hours kind of
right.
prepared us in some ways.
Yeah, I kind of knew what well, I mean, I thought I knew. I would have never thought at the beginning that you getting into Parks and Rec would be hours that were the same as what I thought coaching would be, or that
Yeah.
we've moved as many times as I thought we would as a coach's wife. That was something that I was preparing for whenever we were early married, and I knew going into that that's what that was going to look like. And you switched over to Parks and Recreation. And at first I was like, okay, he's going to like 9 to 5 job. This is going to be pretty
Mm.
easy. And I think it's been interesting as we've gone through your years and as you've stepped up, there are different aspects of it that were different at 5 years, are different at 10 years, or different at 15 years. And
Yeah.
how we have had to have those constant conversations to adjust the expectation of what that looks like, and also to adjust our goals. As I mean, I'm 100% bought in now that we're working together towards something. Like there are good things that come from what you do, and we're all working together with the same goal. But that had to come about with us talking about it and with us discussing, like, how do we get from point A to point B, you know?
Yeah, that whole it's a very tired saying in some ways and very um it's a saying that was of a different era. But behind every great man is a great woman. I think you can apply it in some ways. Behind every great park and rec professional is a great park and rec home life because I I I think it would be very challenging to be a truly intentional, ambitious, creative, driven park and rec professional, and then you come home to what is a really tense, stressful marriage, not because you're falling out of love with each other or because some sort of health or financial issue. Those affect every marriage, um, or religion or culture, all the things you have to overcome when you decide you're going to get married and your first Thanksgiving, your first Christmas. Any marriage has to survive those. But then on top of that, we work this crazy shift and are held up to a public scrutiny that is, I wouldn't say unseen, because there are some other, obviously nurses and doctors and teachers are held up to scrutiny. The hours are different. Nurses have different hours, but they don't have as much scrutiny. Um, Coaches of any local or regional sports probably get the eyes of some stuff, but it's a unique work shift and a unique set of scrutiny that it adds a layer to a marriage that marriage is already tough. I mean, half of them fail already, and then, you may get this work life thing figured out and this balance figured out. Like I'm thinking of Jonathan and Alyssa. They've been married for, I think, my rec superintendent's been married for, I think, 5 to 7 years, probably, I think. And now they're adding their first kid. Now we added kids immediately, but um, Tom and Melissa, Lindsay and Jay, others added kids at some point along the way. And so then not only do you have the relationship with your spouse, and then potentially being disappointed by the lack of time they get with someone, because Parks and Rec is a nights and weekends business, that, and especially when you're a park and rec professional, your entry level is nights and weekends. It's tough to, unless you're seniors potentially, and you work morning shift somewhere. I would say the majority of your operations is at a night, at a weekend. You're
And
running the
holidays.
sports. Yeah, you're running the sports league. You're running the turkey trot. You're not at the turkey trot. You're not at the Thanksgiving event. You're not in the Christmas float. You're running the Christmas float. And that's one thing for a partner to get over, a spouse to get over along the way. But then you introduce a kid to it or a couple
Mhm.
kids to it. And then you're job might make you. I've tried not to miss performances and events for just shifts for a program or an event. But I can't just miss a bunch of council meetings. I can't miss Parks Board meetings. So if a kid is performing on a Tuesday night when I have um, a city council meeting, there's not a lot I can do about it. And the same thing on a Thursday night when I have Parks Commission, or on a Wednesday night when I had a steering committee for citizens. Like, and all of a sudden I've just mentioned Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and so that's when a lot of stuff happens for kids. They athletically they perform maybe on a Friday or a Saturday, but their performances for the public, like a PTO night or some sort of third grade or fifth grade
Usually,
performances
yeah. Yeah.
sometime during the week. So I think that leads us to our next question. How did this idea come about?
Well, this idea originally came about because well, my good friend Josh Keller and I have bonded at
Who we will
conferences.
see as a
We, yeah, as a
future guest and
future
probably
guest,
guest host along the
absolutely.
way.
We had connected. We were talking about this the other day. Originally in Indy, actually we met in New Orleans and just met each other, and we saw each other again at conference the next year in Indianapolis, and hung out, had a really great time, and then really connected the year that we were in Nashville, and basically it kind of turned into we've just been able to, and everybody else is in their circles talking about all
Our
the
little
different,
group
yeah,
specifically.
our family group, right? Whenever we're out at conference and we were all together, you guys would all be talking about Parks and Rec stuff. And Josh and I are over in the corner talking about, so where are your kids? How are you handling schedules? How are you carpooling children back and forth? Like, who's watching? Just the logistics of how we run behind the scenes, because both of us have had careers for a long time. We've both been the working spouse with our kids, but we're also primary caretakers of our kids. So it's not just the female that deals with this. A lot of times
Sure.
it's the male spouse too that is or the loved one that is behind the scenes, making sure that things are getting taken care of. So he and I had that conversation, and have had that conversation for a long time now. But as we have added other spouses into our group, as I have gotten to know other spouses of Parks and Rec professionals, this has been a conversation that has come up repeatedly. And whenever I've met other spouses, we will not know each other for very long at all, but this is something we connect over really, really quickly, and have gotten into deep conversations of, how do you reconcile this stuff? How do you reconcile your expectation? How do you reframe what you think was supposed to happen versus what is happening? You get together with other spouses, other friends that aren't in the Parks and Rec field, and their initial reaction to seeing the other side of what this looks like is, well, why don't they just leave? Why can't they just
Mhm.
come home early? This is ridiculous. My job would never do that. And if you're not careful, that can create this whole envy over somebody else's situation. And how do you reframe the envy? How do you reframe the jealousy of somebody else to still be able to see the real good of what you have, um, and to be able to figure out how to deal with the not so good, because there are not so good parts of being a Parks and Rec spouse, as there would be in any other situation. The grass is not always greener, but how do you reconcile this?
It's funny, like I've met spouses of teachers at your events, and I don't connect with them. Like there's some level of survival I think we all understand. But the the connection that you seem to have almost instantly when you meet another spouse of a park or a partner of a park and rec professional, and especially if you see one or they see one thriving, like it's almost like, wow, how are you doing it? Because we're over here just trying to survive. And it's that's tough. It's not something we talk about a lot in this industry at all. I think from my side of this, I went to college, in grad school. I thought I'd be a coach, ultimately became a park and rec professional. Um, I have a park and rec. I have a leisure fitness undergrad and a recreation parks and tourism major. And no one once ever talked to me about what I'd have to balance and a conversation I need to have with my wife or my kids about Dad's not going to see the fireworks with you this year. I'm probably not ever going to see the fireworks with you. Yeah, I know you're going to pull up to an event and your best friend from school's dad's going to be right there drinking a beer, making some brats, enjoying himself, or throughout the day, they will have hosted a party at a lake or in a backyard, a pool party. And I know all the other dads are there. Um, I'm not going to be there. I can't. You may come to my fireworks show, and I may even be able to get you behind the scenes and show you the trailer and try to find you a really good spot to watch the show. But those hours leading up to it or whatever, I'm going to be out setting up that show. And it seems in a lot of ways short-sighted. Um, if we're trying to develop park and rec professionals, that we don't give them the tools to have a healthy home life as well.
Yes, I agree because there is so much that needs to be talked about with for I mean for years we have four kids and we had kids early into your career and you're right, like when you talk about 4th of July, we have never ever hosted a 4th of July barbecue.
Mm-mm.
Not once. We have and I mean like you've always been at a 4th of July event. We go see you. We bebop in and we get to hang out and we get to do the
When
things.
I was an
But
intern in Arlington, we went to a 4th of July parade that the city of Arlington put on, but I was an intern. I wasn't required to be
that's
there.
right.
It's the last parade I've ever been to.
I
Every other
forgot
parade
about that.
I've ever been to, I've put on, or I've been working, or I've hosted, or I've had to work the EOC. Sometimes I can't
Mhm.
even see you. You're at an event and I'm at an event, but I'm in the emergency operations center. And so I can't even step out and sit and watch a portion of the parade or even watch y'all enjoying the parade, even.
Mhm. And so what does that do for the spouse? How do you be the creator of fun, the creator of memories? Because what you don't want to do is to color your child's experience with that. I mean, they're out there
Yeah,
having a good time. They don't know any different. So how do you reframe that? Like to be able to still really enjoy what you're doing and for your kids to really have a great time with it. Um, and to not be jealous or to not be upset that you're not having the same experience as someone else, right? I mean, once
yeah,
again, there are the grass is not always greener on the other side of the fence, but it's
sure.
real easy in those moments to look at everybody else's grass and go, "Well, at the moment, it sure does look greener than what I'm doing right now." So, yeah, I think that is where, back to the original question, where did this come from? Having these conversations with other spouses and really having discussions about it. And for other spouses to realize, for other support systems to realize, you're not the only person that's thinking these things. You're not the only person that has had to walk this road and reconcile where you are with this particular career.
We were in the Houston area and we had that hurricane, which is another part of public service that we don't talk about very often. Sometimes we get to it on RecLess, but not a lot, where you have to work the emergency operations center. And so the hurricane is hitting Houston. It is pounding us. We lost portions of the front and back of our house. At one point, you could look through our house from the front yard through to the backyard because of the damages and the repairs we were working on in Houston. And I was never there with us. Like every morning after a 12-hour shift, I'd come home and try to help the best I could. I'd have to get some sleep, wake up, and go work the night shift for the emergency operations center because we were rescuing people out of homes all night. And I was
Mhm.
running the logistics side of that. And, you know, I remember some of my staff having a tough time with that. Um, uh, Julia in particular, and you having to talk to her husband, Connor, a little bit about, he's seeing his wife drive in and he's there by himself. I think they had one kid at the time, maybe they have two beautiful kids now. But But he was just trying to wrap his head around, he's got to drive her in and drop her off, and then he's stuck at home all night, and there's a storm hitting and power is surging, and we were taking on water. Y'all were bailing water every night. I was trying to get um, bags that we could dam up the house. I mean, it was a real survival experience, and I'm not even there for that.
Yeah. That the night that Harvey hit was probably the scariest night ever of my entire life. And we had the hurricane was hitting. I had pulled all of the furniture up, the rugs, everything off the floor. We were sopping up water as it was coming through the windows upstairs. I mean, 50 inches fell in one night. And at one point, you were at the emergency operations center and you called me. And
Yeah, a
I had
twister had broken off.
and had was heading for the house. Like you were sitting there watching it on the
Probably
map
probably the worst moment of my life. I
as
could see a twister
it
heading
was
towards our
coming
neighborhood,
for the
and
neighborhood.
and I couldn't save y'all. I couldn't do anything.
And we had already cleaned out the bottom of this closet, like in the event that we were going to have, because we just didn't have enough space to fit everybody into like an interior spot. And you had called them and said, get in the closet, get the kids in the closet right this second. And that twister ended up hitting a half mile from the house and caused incredible damage. It was a really scary night. I mean, obviously there are moments like that happen with people, but this is stuff that we don't talk about so much. Like, there are parts of being a public servant. It is the best job in the world to be able to make an impact. And at the same time, in order to have an impact, you have to be there working it. And that also means that you're not always with your family whenever you're having that impact. And for your family to realize that you have a vision of what can be, and that you're working something bigger than yourself, they have to be bought into that in order for you to be able to be successful. If I had been home and had been crying and had been begging for you to come
Yeah.
home during that whole thing, you would have not been able to take care of all the people that y'all were literally rescuing off of roofs of houses and
Yeah.
stuff. Like it was very, very serious. So it was important for me to be able to handle things and to stay calm because you needed to be able to have a clear head in order to be able to do what you needed to do.
Yeah, knowing you when I did talk to you, and it was pretty infrequent, because it was the night shift, and we were doing a lot of rescue missions, and we were breaking into the academy and Target and Walmart and getting supplies from the businesses that had shut down to try to restock our next recovery effort. And so it was an insane time for sure. But when I did talk to you, knowing that I could hear that you were okay, allowed me to be hyper focused on the rescue missions that we were doing, and coordinating them and making sure they had the supplies needed, logistically, to be able to do that. And I think that leads to the next question. Um, why do you think this podcast is important?
I really think that the more that you hear someone else say, I've been through this and I understand what you're going through, and this is how we handled it, I think is an important, it's just an important aspect of just being able to realize that you're not alone, to be able to normalize some of the things that we deal with. And I just think talking about and highlighting these circumstances makes it a little bit easier to be able to have conversations. I ultimately hope that the end result of this is that the park professional can go home and say to their spouse, hey, listen to this episode. How did that make you feel whenever that happened? What are our goals? Like what was the part that was hardest for you? How can we reconcile this? How can I support you in whatever it is that we're doing moving forward? I hope that what this brings about is conversation, because ultimately in any relationship, you have to be able to talk about things. You have to be able to have hard conversations and find ways to reconcile or make the situation as good as it can be in whatever that situation may be. But I mean, like, conversation's important.
I think on that line graph, of survival. The other side is thriving. You're either
Yes.
surviving something or you start to closely matriculate towards thriving in some way or another. And I think from my conversations that I've had with you after you've talked to spouses, there are a lot of people 10, 12, 15, 20 years in that the spouses, when you talk to them, they're very supportive. They love their spouse. They're proud of their spouse, but they're still surviving. They are not
Yeah.
thriving.
Yeah. And I think ultimately I I want them to thrive. I think that it is possible to thrive in this situation. All the things that we've just said, you can say all of them are very, very negative. But at the same time, there's also really positive things that come of those things too. Our kids have gotten to experience so many different events that they would have never experienced. You've gotten to take them behind the scenes and to participate in an event not as a spectator, but as
Yeah.
a VIP. Those are all experiences that our kids would have never had it not been for that. You
Landry
and
was
I, oh, go
very
ahead.
young. Landry was very
Mhm.
young. And Santa Joe, God bless him, was the Santa I used in Missouri City for years. He passed away a couple years ago, but he was a petting zoo guy. January through November, he ran a petting zoo and a little farm. But the month of
With a
Christmas,
reindeer.
yep, the month of Christmas, he was Santa Joe, and he got to ride. I drove one of those vehicles you get from one of those new car lots. They gave us a nice convertible car, or truck. I can't remember that year, but every year the car dealership would donate 5 or 6 cars, and we'd put dignitaries in them. And Santa was the last. He was the end of the parade, and our daughter got to ride with him
With
um,
Santa, the whole parade.
the
It
whole
was
parade.
great.
And he talked to her the whole time. He remembered her name. The next year, he saw her at the event, and of course, she believed him to be Santa, not Santa Joe. That was Santa. And then to see him the next year, and he say, "Hey, Landry, good to see you again." You don't get that from sitting on the side of a parade. You don't
No,
get
you don't.
that from being a bank president or a really good mechanic even at that dealership. I don't even know if the guy that owns the dealership gets that experience. So there's some cool spots, and I think every job, and it is what you make of it. I think what's got to be tough for the spouses and the families is the majority of the people they observe have an 8 to 5 life. We don't. Park and rec professionals don't, so we don't think of it very often. There's nothing at all. I could be at the office at 7 o'clock and I don't think anything of it. But the spouse who's been home for a couple hours, or the partner that's been home for a couple hours, or maybe even all day if they work from home, and the kids have gotten home anywhere from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock with an after school
Mhm.
possibility, and or the bus or whatever. There's 2 full hours of probably homework and dinner prep and maybe even baths or getting ready for a soccer practice or something else that's happening that day or whatever that they've had to do by themselves. And so I think in those moments, I don't think much at all of I'm out at a field or I'm at the rec center or I'm at a park and rec commission, and that's just what life looks like. But you don't think about um, that family at home that's not seeing you and seeing everyone else seeing their significant others who worked at a bakery that day or worked at a data center, and they're home by they get off at 5, they're home by 5:30, 6 o'clock, and they're they're helping. And so I think in some ways it's really important to talk about the really genuinely amazing things and the really tough things about a non 8 to 5 work life, so you can start to get beyond the survival of that life.
Yes. And I will say that whenever our kids were that age, I think the important thing to remember is that this too passes, right? That they're not in that stage for forever. It feels like it whenever you're in the middle of it, but eventually that does pass. And I think one of the things that we did that I always really appreciated, because of course I did a lot of bath times, a lot of, I
Hmm.
mean, obviously it was all the school things, drop
All the
off, pick up.
dinners.
That was
Yep.
me, all the dinners. And I would feed the kids early, save you food, and then you would eat with
Mhm.
them whenever you came in. In fact, we would bump back bedtime a little bit so that you got to see them before they went to bed every night.
Yeah.
And you'd roll in roll in hot, if you will, like I had everything done so that when you were there with them, it was really good quality time. And
Yeah.
then to bed they went, right? But that part was hard. There's no way around that. I will say later, whenever the kids were a little bit older and they were doing sports, it was really great that you stepped up in a lot of those situations and you were either coaching their team or
Mhm.
we traded off quite a lot. You would make sure that whatever night you were off, you took them to sports practices. So we ended up, I mean, we were at
Yeah.
the soccer field Monday through Friday there for a good 2 or 3 years, but
Yeah. I was a tag
we'd
team.
trade it off, right? I mean, you did a lot of that part of it. And so you found ways to make that a little bit easier too, which was important.
And I got that from a Bob Stoops book. Like, so I knew a non 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 life was going to require me to be home late, but it also provided me the opportunity to not have to be there at 8 o'clock necessarily. There are times that you have to be there for an 8 o'clock meeting, but I did get to you took the kids to school when you drove to elementary school because they went to the same elementary school that you taught at. But junior high and high school, for a long time, I was the one that would drive them to school. And so the mechanic that works at the Ford dealership has to leave his house at 6:30 in the morning or 7 o'clock, has to be there by 7:30, has to start working at 8 o'clock. Same thing with the bank president, same thing with the barber shop owner, same thing with the lady that runs the salon, and so I think that's where you start to highlight not only did they get some cool experiences like riding with Santa or seeing the fireworks set up or some of those things, but I, I tried to value the morning time that I had with them because those same dads they were comparing me to probably never saw their kids in the morning. They were on the bus route, or the mom took them to school, or they did one of those car rider co-ops or whatever. And so um, I tried to at least make the mornings where I was taking them to Whataburger on the way in, or trying to find donuts, or just having fun moments with them before I dropped them off, and then got to work at 9 or whatever I was doing that day, just so I had seen them in the morning and see them before they go to bed if that was possible. That was the plan.
Absolutely. And it allowed for a lot of organic conversation to be able to flow because you're taking them to breakfast, you're taking them to school. You were able to coach through a lot of social situations because you would see them right before they were stepping into whatever it was that they
Yep.
were about to do. So absolutely, like focusing on the parts that you do have and making those things happen, right? Making the
So
most
we
of your situation.
so we've talked about this being important and the concept and where it came from. What are you hoping to accomplish with this podcast, this venture?
I would love that at the end of or through the process of this, I'm able to compile a little toolkit that just allows some questions, just some situations that people can spark conversation and talk to their spouse, that talk to their support system about how they can support each other through this, how the spouse can better support the parks professional, how the parks professional can better support their family. Like how well do you sell your job at home? Do you come home and moan and groan about all the bad things that happen during the day?
Mm.
Does the support system actually, like I can come home and say all the terrible things that happen during the day at whatever job it is that I have. That may not mean that I actually hate it. I may actually really enjoy parts of it, but how well are you selling that to them to where they know too? So I hope that through this whole thing, I'm able to put together like a toolkit that allows for conversation. I want to see families thrive in this. It would be really, really great to see a bunch of Parks and Rec professionals do fantastic things because they feel completely supported and they're not feeling like they're on top of the world at work and their home life is crumbling
What are
because
the
of
plans?
their job.
What are the plans for the pod itself?
I would like to see it to release bi-monthly at the moment is kind of what we're thinking of. And for me to have some guest hosts in and out, for us to be able to talk to some of our former RecLess guests and their spouses, and their support system, and hear their stories, because everybody handles it a little bit differently. What's worked for you and me may not work for somebody else. You know, my mindset may not work for somebody else. So if you've been successful, what's your secret? What have you done that has made you successful in your relationship and able to thrive in this little corner of what we do?
Are you going to do it with just audio or video, or what are you thinking?
I want to release this as video on YouTube and then also release it as an audio for podcasts. So you can listen to it however you'd like to listen to it, but you can also watch and see. And I'm really excited to interview, like I said, the couples. So it'll be the spouse and the professional.
I like that couple concept because I think it'll be very interesting to see. Well, I think it'd be quite interesting to see how a park and rec professional maybe sees their partner processing in the moment questions or hardships or even trauma at times. We use that term loosely. That's probably an overplayed term nowadays, but the impact at times this industry has had on them, both in a beautiful way and in a really difficult way. And um, I think you made a point earlier. If everyone in this family is sacrificing for me to work this shift, I should probably do as good a job as possible talking about the impact I've had on that. Like it's funny if I'm dressed up and I leave with you, our kids think we're going on a date. If I'm dressed up at 7 o'clock at night, right? If I'm dressed up and
Right.
I leave at 7 o'clock at night and you're not coming with me, they just know I've got a commission meeting, I've got a board meeting, I've got a council meeting of some sort. Um, and that's a moment where they know that someone else's dad is probably home, you know, and now that he might be home working in the garage or watching the sport, so he might not be any more engaged than I am, but they do see me leaving when they know their friend's father's stay. And so, I have to really reconcile that sometimes and try to make sure the moments I have with them, I'm doing a good job. And I wouldn't get on this podcast and say I've always been great at that. So hopefully not only will the spouses be able to talk about how this job's impacted them positively and negatively. I think hard conversations are what move the dial in our world and how we get better. And so it's hopefully good for them to flesh that out. But I think in some ways it's probably going to be good for the park and rec professional to see the impact that their career has had on their spouse, both positively and negatively as well. And hopefully it leads to other conversations.
I agree. I love being editor on RecLess. I've heard so many conversations. I mean, obviously hours and hours and hours at this point of people that all drink the Kool-Aid, right? All of y'all have found your calling. You believe strongly in what you do. And I think it's important that the family support system feels that way too,
Yeah.
that they can see the impact and that they have bought in. And how do you create that buy-in? How do you love on your family at home to really sell your story and to make your family feel not that they have been sacrificed to Parks and Rec, but they've been brought in, and that they are also thriving in this career with you, rather than they were the collateral damage of you getting to do this career.
And speaking of those park and rec professionals, you've already got some couples committed. You want to highlight anybody that you've got committed so far?
Sure. Well, so Josh and Katie obviously are going to be on with us. I'm very excited to interview them. And Chris and Robin Nunes are going to be an upcoming guest, which I'm really excited to sit and talk to them with their very successful relationship, successful kids that have gone on to do great things. One of
Yeah.
them is also kind of in the field a little bit too, and um, and hear what their secrets are. Because once again, I do not claim to have all the answers. I think there's a lot of different ways to do this successfully, and I'm excited to hear other people's success stories and their
You know, Kate,
struggles.
absolutely. Both Katie and Chris Noons they're going to be names that um, 75-80% of our industry have heard of in some capacity or another and would consider a success. Both are directors, both have, Katie started the woman and helped start the Women in Parks movement, and Noons has been an incredible mentor to so many people, have done a lot of presentations. It's kind of been um, one of the true, metronomes of this industry. He really leads our industry and our thinking and our thought process. And he's presented all over, I think he's really presented all over the world, but definitely all over the country, educating park and rec professionals. And I think it's great that Robin and Josh will get a little time in the sun, because when you see Noons and you see Katie Keller, they're standing on the shoulders of a team of people who have both their organizations and their family structure, and even their friend support or their colleague support groups that have elevated them into a spot where they can really have an impact on these folks. But I think sometimes we don't appreciate the support system. We just appreciate the person we see standing on top of everyone's shoulders, the top of the pyramid. It's like you watch one of those cheerleader pyramids, it'd be like only celebrating the gal that's on top and not the 8 people that are below that have made the whole pyramid successful. And so I love that Robin Noons and Josh Keller will get some highlight, because the success of their spouses is theirs as well. You know, in one fashion or another, they wouldn't have had that success without it. And I know you've got some other names. I know you haven't confirmed them yet, but I'm excited to see who you bring on in the conversations you have. Do you have anything you want to add before we end this?
I appreciate you taking time to do this today. I appreciate your support in giving me the chance to highlight other people that are doing things really well. And I'm excited to hear about the conversations that may come about as a result of this. I think I think conversation is healthy. And I think in order to thrive in a situation, you have to be able to look at the good and the bad and the ugly and examine all of it and talk about it. And I hope that this brings about positive positive conversation for couples in the field.
Well, as the guest host of this Parks and Rec Life, I want to thank everyone for listening this long. And if you're interested in this, make sure you continue to follow us. I think we'll be releasing this in our RecLess stream a little bit, but I think it'll have its own release as well. And I really look forward to seeing um, everything that comes of this venture. And I think it's really cool. I think it's really needed. I think if you were going to talk about an underserved population of people in our industry, or an unnamed population of people in our industry that don't get the recognition or support, I think there's probably a couple different groups you could name, but it would be crazy not to name the family structure and the partners and spouses that elevate these park and rec professionals and allow us to serve the communities we serve. And so I really hope that this thing takes off and that a lot of people get things out of it, and that you have a great run of guests and conversations that people can learn from.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yep. Till next time. See ya.
See you later. Bye.